The teachers said they couldn't control themselves around the girls, so we flipped the script on them. It started 3 weeks ago when Alyssa Thierry ran out of Mr. Kortenhorst's class crying again. This was the 4th time this month at our supposedly progressive LA school, and we all knew why. Alyssa had just finished getting sick when she told us how he'd commented on her yoga pants, saying they were inappropriate for a learning environment, while staring directly at her camel toe. The thing was, I wore the exact same brand of athletic tights for wrestling, but apparently they were only a problem with Alyssa. Principal Van de Bett called an emergency assembly that Friday. She stood at the podium, lips pressed into that thin line that meant someone was about to get steamrolled, and announced the new dress code. To maintain a professional learning environment and minimize distractions for our faculty, she said, emphasizing that last word like it physically hurt her. Tight athletic wear is now banned. The girls around me deflated. Dee Dee, who lived for her morning runs before school, muttered something unrepeatable under her breath. Alyssa just stared at her hands. "This is for your protection," Van de Bett continued, and I swear she actually believed it. "We need to ensure our teachers can focus on education." That's when Tyrone, sitting next to me, whispered, "Did she just say the teachers can't control themselves?" Mr. Kortenhorst and Mr. Creeperson were standing against the wall, pretending to be happy about the new rule. That night, I actually read the new dress code Van de Bett had posted, word for word, 3 times, and it never said student. It just said, girls must not wear form-fitting athletic wear that could distract from the learning environment. I screenshot it, sent it to the boys' group chat. "We wear the same stuff for sports," I typed. "Every single day." TJ responded first. "Bro, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Before we knew it, the plan formed itself. If the teachers couldn't control themselves around athletic wear, then we'd give them something to really not control themselves around. Monday morning, I pulled on Alyssa's exact outfit. It was the same fitted athletic tank the volleyball team wasn't allowed to wear anymore. My football buddies did the exact same. Tyrone wore his sister's old gymnastics leggings. TJ squeezed into compression shorts that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. We didn't know what to expect when we walked, but it wasn't total silence. The first person who gave a reaction beyond the bug-eyed stare was Alyssa. When she saw us, her eyes actually filled with tears, but the good kind. The kind that meant someone finally understood exactly what she was going through. Even the woman teachers who hated us were now looking at us with a weird sense of pride. Principal Van de Bett's face when she saw us was a masterpiece. This deep purple color creeping up from her collar, mouth opening and closing like Nikocado Avocado, downing his 10th meal of the day. But what could she say? We were following the dress code. The real test came in Mr. Kortenhorst's class. 22 boys in athletic wear that would have gotten any girl sent home. He kept trying to look anywhere but at us. And let me tell you, watching him squirm was deeply satisfying. His voice cracked 3 times during the lecture on the Revolutionary War. By lunch, half the male population was in yoga pants. The football team even showed up to practice in their compression gear and refused to change. "It's what we wear under our uniforms anyway," our captain told Coach Creeperson. "Unless you're saying there's something distracting about it? Did the underage girls distract you dressed like this, sir?" Creeperson's face went red, then white, then red again. We were doubting whether or not we were doing the right thing. But that's when we heard Mr. Kortenhorst in the hallway talking to Coach Creeperson. "Thank goodness for this new rule. I was starting to think I'd have to request a transfer. You can see everything through those yoga pants, even the outline of their underwear." He trailed off when Creeperson coughed uncomfortably. And the next day, Van de Bett made an announcement on the intercom. "The dress code is meant to protect students from unwanted attention." "Unwanted attention from who?" I asked her when she called me into her office. My purple leggings, yes, purple, seemed to personally offend her. "You know exactly what you're doing," she hissed. "Following the dress code?" I pulled out my phone, showed her the screenshot. "It says right here, this isn't what it means and you know it. Then what does it mean? Why are these clothes only a problem on girls? Why can't your teachers control themselves?" She actually flinched at that. Good. Wednesday was when things got serious. See, Alyssa's mom was on the school board, and Alyssa had been documenting everything. Every comment, every girl who'd been told her body was too distracting for grown men to handle. The wrestlers showed up to their match in protest, asking why them being topless didn't violate the dress code. The tennis team filed a formal complaint that their uniforms showed their knees. The school board scheduled their meeting for 3 weeks out, which meant 3 more weeks of wearing these purple leggings to the school every single day. My thighs chafed. The elastic waistband left marks on my stomach. But quitting now would hand Van de Bett exactly what she wanted. Proof that this was just some stunt instead of a real protest about a real problem. So every morning I pulled on the same outfit, walked past the same staring teachers, and watched them try to figure out what to do about 20 guys dressed exactly like the girls they couldn't stop commenting on. Thursday at lunch, this girl with a notebook approached our table where me, Tyrone, and TJ were eating. She had press credentials hanging from her neck, the official school newspaper kind. She introduced herself as Lucille Koch and asked if she could interview me about the protest for the paper. My stomach dropped. An interview meant my name attached to this whole thing in print, permanently, where colleges and future employers could find it. Tyrone kicked my shin under the table and pointed out we were already pretty visible walking around in athletic wear every day. I agreed to talk. Lucille pulled out her phone to record and asked about how the protest started, what we wanted to accomplish, whether we expected the school to actually change anything. I explained about Alyssa running out of class crying, about reading the dress code word for word and noticing it only said girls, about deciding that if athletic wear was so distracting, then the teachers should have to deal with it on everyone. She took notes while I talked, asking follow-up questions about whether we planned to keep going and what we wanted Van de Bett to do differently. The interview took 20 minutes. She thanked me and said it would run in Friday's paper. That night I barely slept, imagining how my parents would react when they saw my name in print, talking about teacher objectification. Friday morning, the paper came out during homeroom. Lucille had written a full front-page article with the headline about student protest against gendered dress code enforcement. She quoted me directly about the policy never specifying students and about teachers needing to control themselves. By third period, the main office phone was ringing constantly, parents calling to ask why their sons were protesting, parents calling to complain about the school allowing boys to wear inappropriate clothing, parents calling to ask what the hell was going on with the dress code. Van de Bett sent an email to all families before lunch, claiming students had misunderstood the policy's intent and that the administration was working to clarify the guidelines. The email made it sound like we were confused children who didn't understand what the rules meant, instead of students who had read the actual words she posted. That afternoon, Alyssa found me by my locker and showed me her phone. Her mom had forwarded an entire email chain between Van de Bett and the district office. The administrators were panicking about legal exposure. The district council had actually flagged the gendered language as a Title IX problem weeks ago, before any of this started, but nobody had done anything about it. They just ignored the legal warning and posted the policy anyway. Now they were scrambling to figure out how to fix it without admitting they messed up. Reading those emails felt like finding the cheat codes to a video game. They knew the policy was wrong, and they posted it anyway. Over the weekend, some of the football players started getting pressure from their families to drop the protest and focus on the season. Parents worried about athletic scholarships and college recruiters seeing their kids involved in controversy instead of playing their best. TJ texted the group chat Saturday night, saying his dad was threatening to ground him if he kept wearing the compression gear. 3 other guys posted similar messages about their parents pushing back. Gael Perez, our team captain, sent a message calling an emergency meeting at his house Sunday afternoon. 15 of us showed up, crowding into his basement where his mom had put out pizza and drinks. Gail asked everyone to talk honestly about whether we could keep going, or if the cost was getting too high. Some guys admitted they were scared about losing playing time or getting benched for the rest of the season. Others worried about their parents following through on punishment threats. Then TJ stood up and said, if we folded now, we were basically telling every girl at the school that their dignity mattered less than our football season. He asked how we could look at Alyssa or Dee Dee or any of the other girls and explain that we quit, because sports were more important than stopping teachers from objectifying them. Nobody could argue with that. We voted to keep supporting the protest, even if it meant risking our athletic eligibility. Monday morning felt different walking into school. Van de Bett's voice came over the intercom during first period announcements. She said the dress code policy was clarified to explicitly include all students in the athletic wear restrictions. She emphasized that the updated language now made clear that everyone had to follow the same rules. She actually sounded pleased with herself, like adding the words all students fixed everything. During second period, a student aide knocked on my calculus classroom door and handed the teacher a note. She read it and told me to report to the principal's office immediately. The walk down the hallway felt long. Van de Bett was waiting in her office with printed screenshots spread across her desk. The photos showed me in the hallway wearing my purple leggings, taken from the security cameras over the past week. She slid a write-up form across the desk and explained I was cited for violating the newly clarified dress code. The form assigned me detention for 3 days starting tomorrow. I asked if she was writing up everyone who wore athletic wear, or just the protesters. She said the clarified policy applied to everyone equally, and I should consider myself lucky it was only detention. By lunch, 15 other guys had detention slips too. We compared notes in the cafeteria and realized Van de Bet was only targeting the core protesters, not the random students who wore athletic gear without making it political. Alyssa's mom texted her group chat, reminding us to document everything because the pattern of selective enforcement would matter later for any legal complaint. We took photos of our detention slips and screenshots of our documented outfits from before the clarified policy went into effect. After school, Mr. Silas Wolfe caught me in the hallway near the history wing. He pulled me aside into an empty classroom and quietly asked if I knew about the district's Title IX office. I admitted I had heard of Title IX, but didn't really understand what it meant. He explained that Title IX was the federal law protecting students from sex discrimination in schools, and that the district had an office specifically for handling complaints about gender bias. He wrote down the website and the name of the coordinator on a piece of paper. He didn't say he agreed with the protest or that he thought the dress code was wrong. He just made sure I knew the proper channels existed for filing formal complaints. Then he told me to have a good evening and left before anyone could see us talking. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the Title IX complaint form on my laptop screen. The website looked official and kind of scary with all these legal terms and required fields. I started typing everything from the beginning. The original dress code policy that said girls, not students. The assembly where Principal Van said the policy was meant to minimize distractions for faculty. Every single comment from Kortenhorst that Alyssa had documented over the past month. The hallway conversation I heard between Kortenhorst and Coach about seeing everything through yoga pants. My fingers kept moving across the keyboard, even when my hands started cramping. I attached screenshots of the original policy text. I uploaded photos of the detention slips Van handed out only to protesters. I included timestamps and dates for every incident. The form asked if I wanted to remain anonymous, and I clicked no because hiding felt wrong after everything we'd done. 2 hours later, I hit submit and watched the confirmation screen appear, telling me someone would contact me within 5 business days. Wednesday morning during first period, a woman in a dark blazer walked past our classroom window, heading toward the main office. She carried a leather briefcase and wore the kind of serious expression that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. The intercom crackled during second period, and the secretary asked for Alyssa to report to the conference room immediately. Everyone in class went quiet. Alyssa gathered her books slowly and walked out with her chin up even though I could see her hands shaking. By lunch, the whole school knew a Title IX investigator was on campus. Marguerite Parsons from the district office was interviewing students about the dress code and everything that led up to the protest. Kids crowded around the cafeteria tables whispering about who got called in and what questions were being asked. The investigation felt real now in a way that made my stomach flip. Lucille caught me after lunch near my locker holding her phone up with a huge grin on her face. She showed me her latest article about the Title IX investigation being officially opened. The school paper site had already gotten 300 views, and local education blogs were sharing the link. One blog called it a test case for how schools handle gender-based dress code problems. Another site interviewed a lawyer who said the original policy language was pretty clearly discriminatory. My phone buzzed with texts from people I barely knew asking if I'd seen the coverage. The protest wasn't just our school drama anymore. It was turning into something bigger that people outside our campus actually cared about. Thursday, a junior girl stopped me in the hallway between third and fourth period. She crossed her arms and told me I was making the whole school look bad. She said colleges were going to see all this negative attention and think our school was a mess. She asked why I had to be so dramatic about a dress code that wasn't even that serious. I tried to explain about Alyssa and the other girls who got harassed, but she just rolled her eyes and walked away. 2 other students I didn't know gave me dirty looks in the bathroom later. Someone wrote on the stall door that protesters were ruining everything for everyone else. The criticism felt worse than I expected, because part of me wondered if they were right. Friday at lunch, I sat alone at a table in the corner picking at my sandwich without really eating it. The cafeteria noise felt too loud, and I kept thinking about college applications and whether this whole thing was worth potentially messing up my future. Alyssa slid into the seat across from me without asking. She put her hand on the table and said thank you for not giving up. She told me that seeing guys actually stand up for what happened to her made her feel less alone than she'd felt in months. She said knowing someone believed her enough to risk detention and angry classmates meant everything. I felt the doubt in my chest loosen a little bit. This wasn't about my college applications or what other students thought. It was about making sure girls like Alyssa didn't have to deal with teachers who couldn't control themselves. Friday night, the football game turned into another flashpoint. Half the team showed up to warm-ups wearing their compression gear instead of practice uniforms. The athletic director marched onto the field during stretches with his clipboard and his face already red. He told Gale and the other captains that if we didn't change into regulation uniforms immediately, he would forfeit the game. Our opponents were already on the field watching this whole mess unfold. Parents in the stands started yelling questions about what was happening. The athletic director gave us 5 minutes to decide. Gale pulled the team into a huddle near the bench. He said we needed to find a middle ground that kept our message visible without completely destroying the season. He suggested we change for the actual game, but wear the compression gear during the pregame team walk through campus. That way, students would still see us making a statement, but we wouldn't lose the game and mess up everyone's stats. The athletic director agreed after Gale promised we'd be in full regulation uniforms before kickoff. We walked through the main quad in our compression gear with the whole school watching before heading back to change. It felt like a small win for keeping the protest visible without sacrificing everything. Saturday afternoon, my parents called me into the living room for a serious talk. They sat on the couch looking concerned while I took the chair across from them. My dad said he'd noticed my grades slipping in a few classes over the past 2 weeks. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. My mom asked if this protest was affecting my ability to focus on college applications and schoolwork. They said they supported what we were trying to do, but they worried I was sacrificing too much of my own future for this cause. The conversation felt heavy, and I couldn't quite meet their eyes while they talked. I went to my room and grabbed the documentation folder I'd been keeping since this started. I brought it back downstairs and spread everything across the coffee table. The original policy screenshots, the detention slips showing selective enforcement, the documented timeline of every inappropriate comment Kortenhorst made to female students. I explained this wasn't just about a dress code. It was about teachers who looked at teenage girls in yoga pants and couldn't control themselves enough to teach a class. It was about a principal who thought protecting teachers from distraction mattered more than protecting students from harassment. My mom got really quiet while she looked through the papers. Then she looked up at me and said she was proud of me for standing up even when it was hard. Sunday night, I checked my email before bed and found a message from Marguerite Parsons. The subject line said, "Formal interview request." She wrote that she needed to conduct an official interview with me Monday morning before first period. The email listed specific incidents she wanted to discuss, including the overheard conversation between Kortenhorst and Coach about seeing girls' underwear through their pants. She asked me to bring any additional documentation I had. The tone was professional but serious in a way that made this feel very real and kind of scary. I screenshot the email and sent it to the group chat, so everyone knew the investigation was moving forward. Monday morning, I walked into the district office building at 7:30 for the Title IX interview. Marguerite met me in the lobby and led me down a hallway to a conference room with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. She sat across from me with a legal pad and a recording device between us. She explained the interview would be recorded and asked if I understood my rights. I nodded, and she pressed the red button. She started with basic questions about when I first noticed the dress code issue and how the protest began. I walked her through Alyssa running out of class crying, the assembly with Van de Bett, reading the policy that night, and realizing it only said girls. My hands shook a little holding the water bottle she'd given me. Marguerite wrote notes in neat handwriting while I talked, occasionally stopping me to ask for specific dates or exact wording. When I got to the part about overhearing Kortenhorst talk about seeing girls' underwear through their yoga pants, she made me repeat it twice to make sure she had the quote right. She asked who else heard it, and I gave her Tyrone's name. Her face stayed completely neutral the whole time, giving me no clue what she thought about any of it. The interview lasted 90 minutes, and by the end, my throat hurt from talking. She thanked me for my time and said she'd be in touch if she needed clarification on anything. I went straight to first period after the interview feeling drained. Tyrone texted me during lunch saying Marguerite had pulled him out of class for his interview. By the end of the day, 5 other students had been called in. TJ, 2 girls from the volleyball team, someone from the tennis team, and Dee Dee all got interviewed. We compared notes in the parking lot afterward. Everyone said Marguerite asked detailed questions about specific incidents and took careful notes, but never indicated what she was thinking. The investigation was clearly getting serious. TJ said she'd asked him about grade changes in certain teachers' classes, which meant she was looking at possible retaliation too. The whole thing felt bigger than just the dress code now. Wednesday morning, I was walking to second period when Lucille caught up with me in the hallway. She had her laptop open and showed me what she'd found. The dress code policy committee that wrote the new rules consisted of 5 people: Principal Van de Bett, Mr. Kortenhorst, Coach Creeperson, the athletic director, and the assistant principal. All men except Van de Bett. 0 input from female teachers, 0 input from students, 0 input from parents. Lucille had filed a public records request and gotten the committee meeting minutes. She'd already written the article, and it was going live on the school paper's website at lunch. She showed me the draft with the committee composition listed right next to quotes from the policy text about girls and form-fitting clothing. The contrast was damning. When the article posted, it spread through the school within minutes. Students were screenshotting it and sharing it everywhere. By the end of the day, parents were calling the school, asking why an all-male committee got to decide what teenage girls could wear. Thursday morning, Van de Bet's voice came over the intercom during first period. She announced a listening session for that evening at 6 in the library, where students and parents could share concerns about school climate. Her tone tried to sound open and welcoming, but came across as defensive. At lunch, Alyssa's mom texted the group chat warning us this was a pressure release valve. Van de Bet wanted to let people vent, so she could say she'd listened without actually committing to changes. But Alyssa's mom said we should still attend and document everything that got said. She reminded us to stay calm, stick to facts, and not let anyone bait us into emotional reactions. That evening I showed up at the library at 5:45. Students were already filling the chairs arranged in a circle. Parents stood along the walls. Staff members sat in a cluster near the door looking uncomfortable. The library felt too small for the 40 students and dozen staff members crammed inside. Van de Bet stood at the front next to a podium someone had wheeled in. She opened by saying she wanted to hear all perspectives on the recent concerns about school climate. Her arms stayed crossed over her chest, and her shoulders hunched forward. She said everyone would get a chance to speak and asked that we be respectful of different viewpoints. The first few students who spoke gave generic comments about wanting to feel safe and respected. Van de Bet nodded along and thanked each person. Then it was my turn. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot of the original policy. I read the text out loud, word for word, emphasizing where it said, "Girls must not wear form-fitting athletic wear." Then I asked why girls was specified if the rule was meant for everyone. Van de Bet's face tightened. She said the policy was written with common understanding in mind, and that everyone knew what it meant. I asked what common understanding meant, and why it wasn't written clearly, if that was the intent. She stumbled through an answer about maintaining professional environments and appropriate attire standards. Nobody in the room looked convinced. A few students exchanged glances. Van de Bet moved quickly to the next speaker. Alyssa stood up and the room got very quiet. She talked about how being told her body was a distraction made her feel like she was responsible for adult men's behavior. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands gripped the back of the chair in front of her. She described walking into class every day, wondering if her clothes would be a problem, if a teacher would stare, if she'd get sent to the office. She said the dress code made her feel like her body was something shameful that needed to be hidden, so teachers could do their jobs. Several girls in the room started crying. One of the female teachers wiped her eyes. Even some of the male staff members shifted in their seats, looking uncomfortable. Alyssa sat down, and nobody spoke for a long moment. A parent from the back stood up. He said his name and that he had a daughter in 10th grade. He claimed we were attacking good teachers who were just trying to maintain professional standards. He said the dress code was reasonable, and that students today didn't understand appropriate boundaries. Before anyone could respond, Michaela Houston stood up from the other side of the room. She introduced herself as a parent coalition organizer and said she'd brought data about gender bias in dress code enforcement. She pulled out printed charts showing that nationwide, girls receive dress code violations at 6 times the rate of boys. She cited studies about how sexualized dress codes harm girls' educational outcomes and mental health. She spoke calmly but firmly, making eye contact with the opposing parent. The data made it impossible to dismiss the concerns as overreaction. The listening session continued for another hour, with more students and parents speaking. Van de Bet took notes, but made no commitments about policy changes or next steps. She thanked everyone for sharing and said the administration would take all feedback into consideration. The session ended at 8, and people filed out looking frustrated. But as I walked toward the exit, I noticed a man in a suit sitting in the back row. He'd been there the whole time, just observing without saying anything. Alyssa's mom caught my eye and tilted her head toward him. After we got outside, she texted the group chat explaining that was the district superintendent. His presence meant the district was taking this seriously at the highest level. The listening session might not have produced concrete results, but someone with real authority had witnessed everything. Friday morning, I was scrolling through my phone before first period when I saw the posts. Someone had created a fake account with a generic username and started posting photos of girls from our school. The photos were normal school pictures, but the captions were disgusting. Comments about their bodies, sexual remarks, ratings of their appearance. Multiple girls got targeted, including Alyssa, Dee Dee, and girls from the volleyball team. The posts were spreading fast with people sharing them and adding their own gross comments. Girls were running to the bathroom crying. Teachers were trying to get the posts reported, but new ones kept appearing faster than anyone could flag them. The account had been created sometime overnight and already had dozens of posts. By second period, campus security was involved, and the administration was trying to trace the account's origin. By third period, campus security had tracked the IP address to somewhere off campus, definitely not a student device. The tech guy explained it to principal in her office, and word spread fast because someone's older sister worked in the main office. An adult had created that account, spent hours collecting photos of underage girls, and posted those disgusting comments. The whole thing shifted from stupid online drama to something way more serious and honestly scary. Campus security contacted the police, who started their own investigation into who owned that IP address and whether this counted as harassment or something worse. The rest of Friday felt weird, with teachers looking nervous and students checking their phones constantly to see if new posts appeared. Alyssa looked exhausted, probably from crying in the bathroom between classes after seeing her photo with those comments underneath. Lucille found me after school in the parking lot. She asked if Alyssa would be willing to record a video statement about what it felt like to have teachers comment on her body, speaking directly to camera for the next article. I told her I'd ask, but couldn't promise anything because Alyssa had been through enough already. That weekend, Alyssa texted the group chat saying she wanted to do it. She said people needed to hear directly from someone this happened to, not just read about it secondhand. We met at Lucille's house Sunday afternoon because she had decent camera equipment from her journalism class. Watching Alyssa film that statement was brutal. She sat in front of the camera, took a deep breath, and started talking about walking into class every day, wondering if today would be the day Mr. Kortenhorst stared too long or made another comment. She described the sick feeling in her stomach when he called her outfit inappropriate while looking directly at her body. She talked about how the dress code made her feel like her body was the problem instead of grown men who couldn't control themselves. Her voice cracked twice, but she kept going, and by the end, Lucille and I were both trying not to cry while she stayed completely steady. Her courage was absolutely stunning, and I felt proud to know her. The video ran in Monday's school paper, both online and in print copies distributed around campus. Lucille's article included the video statement alongside updates about the fake social media account investigation and the police involvement. The combination of Alyssa speaking directly about her experience and concrete evidence that an adult was targeting students shifted everything. Parents started calling the school demanding answers. The district office got involved. Local news picked up the story. By lunch Monday, our protest wasn't just about dress codes anymore, but about the whole culture of teachers objectifying students and administrators protecting them instead of us. Tuesday morning, I found a flyer stuck to my car windshield. It claimed students at our school were part of a radical agenda trying to sexualize children and destroy good teachers' careers. The flyer had no source listed, no organization name, just printed accusations and a grainy photo of the protest. The same flyers showed up in mailboxes all around the school neighborhood, my mom told me when I got home. She seemed more angry than worried, which comforting. Other parents in the supportive group chat were posting photos of the flyers they'd received, trying to figure out who sent them. Michaela Houston organized a response within hours. She got the parent coalition together and printed factual information sheets about what actually happened, including quotes from the original dress code policy, timeline of events, and explanation of what we were actually asking for. Wednesday after school, I saw groups of parents walking the same neighborhoods that got the anonymous flyers, knocking on doors and handing out the real information. Michaela had turned this into an actual ground campaign, and watching parents fight for us felt incredible. The parent opposition thought they could spread lies anonymously, but our parents were willing to show their faces and have actual conversations with neighbors about what was really happening. Thursday morning in the hallway between second and third period, Mr. Kortenhorst walked past me deliberately. He was talking to another teacher, but his voice got louder right as he passed. The other teacher nodded along while Mr. Kortenhorst said something about students who should focus more on academics instead of causing drama and how some people clearly had too much free time. He didn't look at me directly, but the message was obvious. My grades were going to suffer because I'd stood up against him. The threat hung in the air even though he never said it explicitly. Mr. Silas Wolf must have been close enough to hear the exchange because he caught up with me before I reached my next class. He pulled me aside into an empty classroom and explained how to document grade changes through the student portal. He suggested checking my grades weekly and taking screenshots of everything to establish what my grades looked like before any possible payback. He showed me exactly where to find participation grades and how to export the data. He never said directly that he thought Mr. Kortenhorst would retaliate, but the careful way he explained everything made it clear he understood what was happening. That night, I logged into the student portal and started pulling grade data for myself, Tyrone, TJ, and the other main protesters. What I found made my stomach hurt. Several of us had seen our participation grades drop in certain teachers' classes over the past 2 weeks. My grade in Mr. de Kortenhorst's class had gone from a 94 to an 87. Tyrone dropped from a 91 to an 84 in the same class. TJ's participation grade in Coach's class fell from 95 to 88. The pattern was too similar to be random or fair. These were teachers we'd directly challenged, and our grades were falling in their classes specifically while staying steady everywhere else. I screenshot everything and sent it to the group chat. Friday morning, I forwarded all the grade data to Marguerite Parsons. She responded within an hour asking to meet and explaining that payback against students who file complaints was itself a Title IX problem. The investigation was growing beyond just the dress code issue to include how staff treated students who spoke up. She wanted documentation of every grade change, every comment, every interaction that felt like punishment for protesting. The whole thing was getting bigger than any of us expected. Wednesday morning during third period, Principal's voice came over the intercom asking for everyone's attention. She announced that Mr. Kortenhorst had been placed on paid leave while the district completed their investigation. You could hear the collective gasp across campus, even through closed classroom doors. Some students started whispering immediately, while others sat in shocked silence. The teacher whose class I was in looked uncomfortable and tried to redirect everyone back to the lesson, but nobody could focus after that announcement. The classroom erupted the second the intercom clicked off. Some kids started cheering and high-fiving like we'd just won the championship. Others looked worried, whispering about AP history exams coming up and who would teach the class now. I sat there feeling this weird mix of relief and guilt churning in my stomach. Part of me was glad he was gone, that Alyssa wouldn't have to deal with his comments anymore. But another part kept thinking maybe I'd ruined someone's career, even though I knew he did this to himself by being creepy. The teacher tried getting everyone back on task, but it was useless. Everyone had their phones out texting or scrolling through group chats about what just happened. I stared at my desk, feeling like I should be celebrating, but mostly just feeling tired. After school, I found my car in the parking lot and was about to leave when Alyssa knocked on my window. She climbed into the passenger seat without asking, and we just sat there for a minute watching other students walk past. She broke the silence first, saying it felt weird to win something but not feel happy about it. I nodded because I knew exactly what she meant. The whole point was making things safer for girls, but getting there had been exhausting and messy and uncomfortable. She said she was glad he was gone, but wished none of this had been necessary in the first place. We talked for maybe 20 minutes about how strange it felt to force adults to do the right thing. Eventually, she mentioned her mom wanted to help us prepare for tomorrow night's board meeting and asked if I could come over. I agreed, even though the thought of speaking in front of the whole board made my hands sweat. At Alyssa's house that evening, her mom sat us down at the kitchen table with printed copies of the meeting agenda. She coached us on staying factual, speaking clearly, and not getting defensive when board members asked challenging questions. She made us practice our statements 3 times each, stopping us whenever we got too emotional or started rambling. She explained the board members would be looking for specific examples and documentation, not just feelings. She showed us how to pause if we got choked up, how to make eye contact with different board members, how to end our statements with clear requests for action. By the time we finished practicing, it was almost 9, and my throat hurt from talking. Alyssa's mom made us promise to get good sleep and eat breakfast before the meeting. I drove home feeling slightly more prepared, but still completely nervous. That night I lay in bed rehearsing my statement over and over in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined standing at the podium with everyone staring at me. I kept changing words, rearranging sentences, trying to make it perfect. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyrone saying he couldn't sleep either. Suddenly, the whole group chat lit up with everyone admitting they were awake and freaking out. TJ sent a terrible joke about yoga pants that made no sense, but we all laughed anyway. Someone started sharing memes about school boards. We stayed up until almost 4, trading nervous energy and stupid comments that helped calm everyone down. When I finally fell asleep, my alarm went off what felt like 10 minutes later. Thursday evening came faster than I wanted. The board meeting room was packed by the time we arrived, with students lining the walls and parents filling every seat. Community members held signs both supporting and opposing the protest. Some signs said things like students deserve safety, while others claimed we were attacking good teachers. The local news had cameras set up in the back corner with reporters checking their equipment. I recognized faces from the school mixed with people I'd never seen before. The room buzzed with quiet conversations and the occasional laugh that got shushed quickly. Board members filed in looking serious and official in their business clothes. The superintendent sat at the center looking uncomfortable. My hands started shaking before anything even began. When public comment finally opened, I was third on the speaker list. I walked up to the podium with my printed statement clutched in both hands to keep them from shaking so obviously. The microphone was too tall, so I had to adjust it down while everyone watched and waited. I started reading through the timeline of events, explaining how Alyssa ran out of class 4 times, how the dress code specifically said girls, how we found the loophole and wore the same clothes to prove the point. I listed the evidence we'd gathered, including the overheard conversation and the pattern of comments toward female students. My voice stayed mostly steady, even though I could feel my heart pounding. I managed to read through the whole thing without my voice cracking and walked back to my seat feeling dizzy. Alyssa spoke next, and her testimony hit different from mine. She talked about feeling unsafe in her own school because teachers couldn't control their comments about her body. She described what it felt like to throw up in the bathroom after class because a grown man stared at her camel toe while pretending to care about dress codes. She explained how the new policy made her feel responsible for adult men's behavior, like her body was the problem instead of their lack of control. Several board members shifted in their seats looking uncomfortable. One older woman actually pulled out a tissue and dabbed at her eyes. When Alyssa finished and sat down, you could hear people sniffling throughout the room. The weight of what she'd been dealing with hung in the air, and nobody could pretend this was just about clothes anymore. Silas stood up when his name got called and gave measured testimony about staff culture. He carefully avoided naming specific people, but acknowledged that professional boundaries had been unclear. He talked about how students deserve better and how teachers need clear guidelines about appropriate behavior and comments. He said the current situation reflected poorly on everyone, and that the district needed to take responsibility for allowing this culture to develop. His willingness to speak up as a teacher seemed to carry real weight with the board members. They asked him several questions about what kind of training might help and what specific policy changes he thought were necessary. He answered each question thoughtfully, without throwing anyone under the bus, but making it clear things needed to change. Marguerite presented her preliminary findings next, and the room got completely silent. She explained how her investigation uncovered that the dress code committee was all male administrators with 0 female input. She showed data about the pattern of gendered enforcement where girls got sent home for clothes boys wore without problems. She had documentation of inappropriate staff comments about students' bodies collected from multiple witnesses. She presented evidence of grade retaliation against protesters, showing how certain teachers dropped participation scores right after the protests started. She laid out everything in this calm, professional way that made it impossible to deny. When she finished, the board members looked at each other with these concerned expressions, and the superintendent's face had gone pale. The board announced they were going into closed session for deliberations, and we all filed out to the hallway. 90 minutes of waiting felt completely unbearable. Students sat on the floor scrolling through phones trying to distract themselves. Parents made quiet small talk in clusters. Some people went outside for air. I paced back and forth, unable to sit still. Tyrone kept checking the time every 2 minutes. Alyssa sat against the wall with her eyes closed. The tension built with every passing minute as we waited to find out if everything we'd done actually mattered, or if the board would find some way to protect the administration instead of students. The doors opened, and the board members filed back in, looking serious. The superintendent stood at the podium and pulled out a paper with notes on it. He cleared his throat and started reading off the decisions they'd made. The current dress code was suspended right away until they could write a completely new one with student input. Mr. Kortenhorst's leave was extended for now with no return date set. Coach Creeperson was getting moved to a job where he wouldn't work with students anymore. Principal Van would have someone from the district watching over her for the rest of the school year to make sure things changed. The room stayed quiet while he kept reading. All staff had to do Title IX training starting next month. They were setting up a student committee to review policies before they got approved. The district was hiring someone full-time to handle campus climate issues and student complaints. Students around me grabbed each other's hands, and some people started crying quietly. The changes were way bigger than we thought we'd get. The athletic director stood up next and said all protesters could play sports again immediately with no punishment. Our football season could continue even though we'd already missed 3 games. That's when the room erupted with people clapping and students hugging each other. Parents were taking photos, and some of the board members looked relieved. Walking out of that meeting felt strange because everyone was crying and hugging, but it wasn't pure happiness. The whole fight had been exhausting, and some damage couldn't be fixed. Alyssa had been dealing with inappropriate comments for months before we finally did something. Other girls had been sent home and humiliated. Teachers had proven they couldn't be trusted to act right around teenage students. But we'd actually changed something real and permanent. The policies were different now, and future students wouldn't have to deal with the same garbage we did. Friday morning when I walked onto campus, everything felt different. Teachers were being way more careful about what they said and how they looked at students. You could feel the boundaries had been reset. Some staff members looked angry about it and kept their heads down in the hallways. Most seemed relieved to have clearer rules about what was okay and what wasn't. Students were talking about the board meeting in every class. A few weeks later, Lucille's final article about everything won some regional high school journalism award. She called me asking for another interview about what comes next. I told her the real work was making sure the new policies actually got used and enforced. We couldn't just celebrate and then let everything slide back to how it was before. The Student Advisory Committee held its first meeting on a Tuesday after school. 6 students, including me and Alyssa, sat around a table with 2 board members and a district lawyer. We spent 2 hours going through every line of the old dress code and talking about what was wrong with it. The lawyer took notes on everything we said. We worked on creating language that was actually fair and didn't target specific body types or genders. It was boring work, but important. Mr. Asilas actually got recognized by the district for supporting student voice the right way. He told me privately after school one day that speaking up had been scary for him too. Some things matter more than keeping your job safe, though. He said he was proud of all of us for pushing back instead of just accepting how things were. Alyssa and I became actual friends through this whole experience. Not in a romantic way like some people assumed and gossiped about. We just understood what each other had been through. We checked in regularly about how we were processing everything. Sometimes we talked about the hearing or the protest. Sometimes we just hung out and didn't mention any of it. We both needed someone who got it without having to explain. The new dress code took 3 weeks of committee work to finalize. It ended up being gender neutral and focused on health and safety instead of whether clothes were distracting. It included a requirement that students had to have input on any future policy changes. The board voted to approve it at their next meeting. When the final version got posted on the school website, I read through it twice. It wasn't perfect, but it was so much better than what we'd started with. No more targeting girls for having bodies. No more pretending students were responsible for adult teachers not controlling themselves. Clear rules that applied to everyone the same way. 3 months after the board meeting, Marguerite sent an email to everyone involved saying her investigation was officially closed. The final report ran 47 pages, documenting every pattern of inappropriate behavior, every policy failure, and every gap in our school's systems for protecting students. The district posted it publicly on their website, along with schedules for mandatory staff training and new reporting channels students could actually use. Reading through that report felt strange, because it turned everything we'd lived through into official documented facts with bullet points and legal language. Marguerite had interviewed over 30 students and 15 staff members. She'd reviewed 5 years of dress code enforcement data, showing girls got written up at 3 times the rate of boys for identical clothing. She'd documented how the all-male policy committee never consulted female students or staff about the dress code they created. The report included direct quotes from Mr. Kortenhorst's overheard conversation and testimony from multiple girls about his pattern of comments. It laid out exactly how the school's response to Alyssa's complaints had violated Title IX by prioritizing staff comfort over student safety. The district was now required to submit quarterly reports showing they were actually following through on all the changes they'd promised. A week after the report came out, Mr. Kortenhorst submitted his resignation letter rather than face a formal disciplinary hearing where everything would become part of his permanent record. The district accepted it immediately. Coach Creeperson got transferred to some district office job processing equipment orders where he wouldn't have any contact with students. He kept his salary and benefits, which felt like he got off easy, but at least he was gone from campus. Some people wanted bigger consequences, wanted them fired without benefits or prosecuted or publicly shamed. I got why people felt that way. But having their behavior officially documented and them removed from positions where they could hurt more students felt like something real we'd actually accomplished. The consequences weren't dramatic or satisfying in a revenge kind of way. They were just permanent and recorded in official files that would follow these guys to any future education jobs. That mattered more than I'd expected it to. Looking back now as second semester starts, I feel proud of what we managed to do, even though it cost us so much time and stress and some friendships that didn't survive the tension. We proved students can actually push back against systems that aren't fair and sometimes win if we're willing to document everything and keep showing up even when it gets uncomfortable. The school is measurably safer because we refuse to accept that girls' bodies were the problem instead of teachers who couldn't control their own behavior. The policy changes are permanent and written into official district guidelines now. The reporting systems are actually functioning with a dedicated coordinator who takes complaints seriously. Future students will benefit from boundaries we fought to establish without having to go through what Alyssa and the other girls went through. That matters more than any dramatic ending could have. Well, that's the grand finale, if you can call it that. If you're still here, you clearly have questionable taste, but I respect the dedication. Go on, subscribe, and see how much worse it gets next time.